Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for clicking on it and joining me here today. My name is Allie with A. Marie Speaks, and this video is going to be my attempt at a brief introduction to sequential growth and to the pattern within numerology. I'm going to be using a guide about numerology in general, and then using that to compare and draw parallels to the makeup of the densities. And I'm making this video now sort of as a little beforehand kind of glimpse and working, because all of these topics, excuse me, are infinite in exploration, honestly. And so it's impossible to try to get knowledge into one video that's like all-encompassing, in my opinion, that gets into the depth that needs to be looked at for each topic. However, I think if we just start off with these kind of common threadings and showing the templates at work and how they can show up differently based on whether we're looking in numerology, or we're looking at density growth, we're looking at regular sequential growth, or growth through the tarot even follows this model. And you know, the chakras also follow this same kind of modeling. And so it's my hope here to do this little brief kind of introduction to the similarities, and then I will offer some deeper videos on like the differences and get into each one of them a little bit more. I am planning on doing a little educational section of videos on numerology and tarot. I already have quite a few videos on tarot going already on spiritual divination playlist that talks about how I use that. But I do want to, and I've been talking about and promising that I'm going to make videos about how I use the knowledge of sequential growth and of organic templates incorporated into tarot to reading the cards and finding deeper meanings. So first and foremost, in case anybody is brand new and is confused about what I'm talking about, numerology in general is obviously the study of numbers. And a lot of times when we look at numerology in that field, it looks like reduction. You know, what we do with numbers a lot of times is either we're looking for patterns, we're looking for specifics, and using those as guidance to certain things. Maybe it's special numbers to you, or things that hold sentimental value, or patterns that catch your attention, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the clock, or 11, 11, or 5:55, you know, whatever has a calling to you or you're recognizing, you know, your intuition will tell you those numbers are important to you, you know, because the universe is mathematic, and the infinite creator, and has, you know, intelligent, infinite divine design running the whole show and the whole makeup. And that's why I feel it's so important to understand kind of like the base level of how these things work in order to then better look at the world. And we can see how we can see much clearer why things work the way they do and what's at operation here, when we understand how things work and flow, and that we understand that organic universe runs through the same template. You know, it's a guiding template for us. So with numerology, a lot of times we see people reducing larger numbers down, and I'll talk about that more in depthly with when I get into numerology more. But understanding the basic meanings behind 0 through 9 is the flow of that is the base level foundation workings of what we are doing when we are reducing numbers down, or we are coagulating certain things into, like gematria, we're using, you know, where they use letters and numbers together to find the meanings within them and stuff like that. But having this base level, what I'm going to talk about today, just the base level of numerology, is how we get started, right? And you'll see that the flow of the numbers also matches the flow of how um, the densities work and are stacked. And as well, it also mirrors the flow and um, the states of each of our energy chakras. And and our if you don't know this already, our energy chakras, whether you like Eastern or Western version of these energetic centers within us, um, they all represent certain functions. They're tied into your glandular systems, they're tied into your growth, they're tied into time of life when they're most active, and they're also tied into your ascension growth as a being when we can get them all working together harmoniously and having them all free flowing. Um, and numerology can be a great asset to understanding the workings between the energy centers. And then, we have a larger template that the energy centers and the chakras of our whole world, right? And our world sits on a beautiful, if you know anything about the ley lines and the energetic balances that are available within the organic earth, they mirror and model this, they mirror the same model, excuse me. And then when you start to look at other things and you look at other people's interpretations, it's beautiful because you can see the flow matching. And I feel it's underlying truth, that guides all of these things together. And as quick examples, I wrote a whole blog, and I will put a link in the blog in case you're interested, to see how I have compared numerology alongside the hero's journey, which is sort of like a pathway of building stories, fictional stories usually. Joseph Campbell, this writer, he came up with this great idea and concept of the hero's journey, that makes stories so wonderful, and and it follows the same template. It's so beautiful. And then in that, excuse me, in that same article, and I think I might have done a podcast on it as well. I also matched over the template again of Carl Jung's archetypes, the major archetypes. I mean, he's got 74 or something, I think, but I looked at the major archetypes, of 1 through 12, and compared their numerology with their conception of what they stand for, and they model the same flow. And so, if that kind of intrigues you and you look for a deeper bit of a dive, you can check that out. But for now, what I'm going to do is share my screen, and I'll show you first that model of all the comparisons, just as a little glimpse, of what I'm talking about, in case you want to look at that blog later. Oh, of course I don't have it up. I'm sorry. I should have these things prepared, right? Oh. Okay. So this is the model that I'm talking about, and that I made for the blog, and I talked about, just to show everybody here what I'm talking about. So the outside, these names are the archetypes that I'm using from Carl Jung, that are classic base level, the first 11 types of archetypal people and personalities that we can go through. And those are listed here on the outside. And then I've matched them with the number here. And also with this inside here is the hero's journey, kind of broke down into 11 cyclic steps. And they give us a great idea of what we're going to get into with what the numbers mean. And if you look here, you can see we have 0 as the status quo, or the starting point, and then we have call to action, assistance, departure, trials, crisis, approach, treasure, result, return, new life, resolution, and back to status quo. And as you can see, this creates a beautiful flow, and that for itself is kind of self-explanatory as how it works in a story, because you can see the more kind of like literary terms that are being used and guided through that flow. But if you look at the names of the archetypes, you can see something almost similar. And we have the jester, the ruler, the lover, the creator, the everyman, the outlaw, the caregiver, the sage, the innocent, the explorer, the hero, the magician. And back to the jester. Now, um, it's beautiful because also not only are these, I want to say quickly here, not only are the archetypes represent of individual life paths and personalities that maybe we just resonate with one, but it's important to remember that as a soul on a larger journey here, we are working to incorporate all of these, and you're going through all of the cycles, just like, and I'll say just like numerology, I mean just like astrology. And astrology follows this and follows a similar setup as well, and you can see the growth of the individual, the celestial growth of all the bodies by seeing how each phase, starting with Aries, could be considered as one, and watching it grow through 12, all the way around in the progression of how it brings you back to the starting place. And in each house, if you know about astrology, each house has its own meaning, right? And yes, they are separate and they're just angling aspects of life, but we flow through all of them. And if you balance each one and go through it more as a cycling, you'll see your growth like taking off, you know. And then again, you know, you can see the long view and you can stretch it out because time is relative, right? And you can see the growth through your whole entire life on that same cycle setting. So that's kind of the generalities I'm hoping to talk about and point out today, and to use this as a reference. I'm not going to get into in depth about this specific matchup that I have made here. If you are interested in that right now, you can check the blog out that I wrote about it to see what I have to say about that. And like I said, I will make more videos about it. But for now, I want to just give that as a quick example and really get into, whoops, the number flow. Hold on. Again, I didn't pull it up, I swear. I thought I got myself all set up here at the head start, and I did not. Where's my, there we go. Okay, so let's share this. Thank you for bearing with me. We'll talk about the numbers here. Okay, so this beautiful number path I have on my website, amariespeaks.com, under my numerology tab. But I also make this as just a wonderful educational tool to help us all look and understand at what's happening when we're flowing through a sequential flow. It's easy to get trapped in a linear state when we think of numbers and when we think of timelines and we think of growth, right? It's easy to look at a staircase model where we're starting down here and ending up here, and these are two different, totally different points that we're, you know, going from to. And from a certain perspective and for certain interpretations and understandings, that's a very important view to have, the linear view. It's important to understand. And from a certain lens in the scope of life, from the observer's view, things can happen like that, you know, and our small individual view, a lot of times it does look like that. However, when we take a larger view and we understand the whole flow of things, we understand that actually it's a cycling, and that when we come back to the starting point, if needed and wanted, and if there's the intention there, then instead of actually doing this, like point and coming right back to that same 0 point and starting over, we might reach level 1 on this same point. And it looks from a certain angle, right? It looks like they're touching. It looks like they're the same place. But when you look at it from this angle, you realize, oh wait, no, they're not. You're one little step higher, but it's the same path again around, but you're one step higher and you're on the 1 level. And then if you make it around again, all the way around through 9, and maybe you need another deeper level of learning in this topic, you make it to step number 2, a little deeper, a little higher, whatever you want to look at it as. And then you're on 2, and it's the same cycling around of this 1 through 9 pathing to bring you back to this 0 space, but now maybe you need it at 3, and you're at the 3rd level here, and you're in the same intentional place of the 0 point, but you're deeper in the learning, right? And if you need 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, all the way more and deeply, you can. But if it's only something small that you're learning about, perhaps you just go roundabout once and you learn it, and then you move on to a new topic and a new 0 point, and you do a little bit more of cyclic learning. And it turns into a spiraling staircase if you look at it upright, right? The growth pattern of whatever topic it is. Um, but when you're inside the user individual level, it might look like a staircase from 0 to 1, and you're climbing up these steps to get here, and then the next steps are here. But in a whole perspective of the observer, it's a cyclic spiraling flow. And so let's look at what it looks like, right? Let's walk through this quickly. So we have here, if you look at my share screen, the number 0, and 0 represents pure potential, blank slate, free will, non-duality. And it's important to remember all possibilities. So the 0 place is just blank, like infinite possibilities. When we move into number 1, is an initial idea. It's the starting point. It's that, oh, I have a thought. I want to do. I desire. I need. Right? Creation, a little spark of idea. New input, inspiration, new concept are the kind of words that I was using as key terms. And the important thing to remember here is to be self-motivated. That's what number 1 is telling us. So, oh, I kind of forgot to say this. So, sort of like I have these kind of signifying terms about what's important about the number, and then I have this last little kind of guideline reminder that I feel is important for these numbers. When we see these numbers, or when we're holding the state of this number, what we need to be really mindful of. So 0 state is to be mindful of holding a place of all possibilities and potentials. And place number 1 is important reminder is to be self-motivated. Because number 1s especially can get really wrapped up in the view of things, or being the leader, or being seen as the leader, or what they're leading, and being a little too tied up in others to keep them motivated, instead of just being a leader and teaching through showing. And like I said, I'll get more into everything about the numbers and personalities and stuff later. I'll do a deep dive on numerology. But this is just to skate over the top to understand the flow. So number 2 is when we hit opposition, comparisons, companionship, duality, choice points. All of these things are representative of the number 2, the fork in the road, right? And the important thing to remember here is that there is a choice or a convergence of things, right? And to be mindful of the choice points that you're being presented with. This, in as simply as problem solving in general life points, it could be you have an idea for initial point of 1, right? And you're not super self-motivated in that idea, and so other idea comes in. And then you're at a choice point of, oh, do I actually follow this creative instinct that I had at first with this project, this painting, this song, or whatever I was working on at first? Or now I have this other one. Do I go with this other one? Is it better? Is it worse? Then will people like it more? These kind of things embody the state of number 2, of that deciding and weighing against things. Then we move into number 3, and number 3 is that point of creation. It's the choice is made, right? You make your choice of, oh, I'm going to stick with this one that I started already, or I'm going to pick up this one. 3 is also about curiosity and imagination. Those are the things we want to tap into when we're embodying the 3. And the little phrase I have is to tap into your inner child. So once you have delineated the idea, you have this great creative energy, you've made your choice to stay on the marker, you've discarded disruptions that can happen with 2, and you've veered yourself in this creative potential energy, the greatest thing now is to fully embody that, to really get into the feeling of what that creative vibe is, to tap into your inner child, to find the love and the joy and the passion within this, whatever this new point is, right? And that's a beautiful state to be at, the 3. And then we move into 4. And 4 is stable growth. Your goals visualized, there's some comfort, there's some crystallization, you can see kind of where you're going. You can really you know, the painting starts to like have a real conceptual idea of it, or maybe you have like an invention you're making, or a service you want to provide or whatever, and you're starting to see the long view of it. The whole shape of it's starting to take form. Now, the word of advice for number 4 is to beware of stagnation, because 4 is like 4 pillars of a house, right? It's like foundation, building. It looks very stable, depending on which way you look at it. And the stability in it can sometimes be work against us, because it can lead to boredom, or it can lead to, oh, I'm done already. Like, oh, this is stable. I have the 4 pillars around it. I kind of knew what it was about. Bored with it now. Now I want something, that new spark, that 0-1 feeling, that bam, that ignition, that ignition, no, igniting, whatever, of that spark, right? That real like motivating kind of adventure feelings that we get in 1, 2, and 3. 4 is when it starts to like fizzle out, kind of. Or you relax into the stability, you relax into the foundation of it, and you're ready to build more. You're ready to really get the whole house built around you, kind of thing. And you can pull in motivation, but beware of stagnation here in number 4. 5 is disruption, unforeseen issues, upsets. It's a validity test of sorts. So it's like the first bad weather after you've built this house, kind of in the house metaphor. It's like a tornado coming through, or a bad storm, or an earthquake or whatever that's going to shake it. And if you made your house crappily, it's going to fall down. Or if you rushed it, or if there are little tidbits that don't work, or things that don't serve, or things that shouldn't be included, they will fall off and shake off at this point of the 5. 5's message is evolve or dissolve. I love that one, because it's really straight to the point, right? Either you evolve your original 0-point design, and you go and build up that, strengthen that, how the side of the walls that was falling down with the house, or you go and rebuild the porch, or you go and sturdy the walls and the beams and all of that, and fill in the cracks in the concrete, and you really evolve this into something really solid, and you have the drive to push through the problems, the catalysts, the disruptions, or it's a whole, it disrupts your whole life. Everything falls apart at a 5. And it can be a real sign to start over, to let it go. It's not going to work. So 5 is a really disruptive number. It's so important. It's so crucial, though, because when you're making something or building something, and you want it to last, you want it to be as best as it can be, or whatever, it has to be put through the motions. It has to be shook. It has to be dropped. It has to be given to others. It has to be poked and prodded at, or questioned, or seen from different angles that maybe you didn't see initially when you were making it. Like maybe you made it in a dark room. Maybe you did your makeup in a dark room, and you go outside and you're like, oh my God, my foundation doesn't even match my neck. Those people who's, you can tell it, they didn't take into account later on they're going to be outside. The 5 is like that. You're like, oh no, I got to start over. It's such an important part of working through, and knowing who we are, right? So if we do move past the 5, we make it through 5 to 6, and 6 is perseverance, doing the work. It's resilience. It's reliable and true. 6s have, that strong test behind them that really pushes them through with this real positive, I can do it, a confidence kind of vibe to it, to have that bigger picture. I've made it through, the kind of like eye of the storm kind of feeling. The worst part is over and dawn is approaching. My note, or my little reminder for 6s, is that you are strong and capable. And if you're trying to make it through, or you've just made it through, tap into that capable and strong energy that is provided with the 6, and relish in it a bit, and see what it feels like, and give yourself a pat on the back for that, because um, you're evolving and adapting. And as you do that, and as you gain a footing there, then you can move into 7. 7 is more of like getting a handle on things. Like you're really becoming that kind of master level of working. You know what I mean? You've been through trials, you've been through tribulations, you've been through this and that, and you kind of know through real wisdom and experiential knowledge about things that work and things that don't in the real world and in the imagination world as well, regarding the 0 point of the whole topic that we're on, right? So you're getting a better feel for things. And I have for number 7, reflection, deeper insight, introspection, wisdom. These are all things that are great to tap into and that come within a representation of that 7 energy. And I have for my little tidbit here, seek higher knowledge. So the point is here with 7, it has a spiritual connection. It has that higher, full 360, multifaceted, multidimensional kind of scope to it. So now your problem, your creation or whatever, has made it through the real world solid testings, has been shaken, has been kind of loose bits have fallen off, you've recoagulated and gotten the house up nice, right? Um, but now is the time to reflect inside yourself. What did you learn? What didn't you learn? What works? How do catalog and organize all of that information and resources into something more solid for yourself, so that you can use reflection to see the biggest picture, to see the next steps, to bring together the physical real world knowledge with the intuition, with the guts, with the energy of it, and to see what that working brings in, and what kind of inner knowledge and inner truths you discover about your original idea at this time. And that kind of space and that kind of deeper connection to the whole and the purpose of the sequential journey, right, brings us into 8. And 8 in itself it looks like the infinity sign, right? It's karmatic. It's the I have here retribution, right? You get what you get. You get the good consequences or the bad consequences. You have the whole picture, right? Basically, back to the house metaphor, right? I kind of forgot about the house metaphor through 6 and 7, but I mean, like, 5 would be finishing the physicality, 6 would be finishing the physical building portions of it, re-strengthening things that fell apart, redoing the floors, like getting all of the drywall and all that kind of real architectural stuff going. Number 7 can be seen as tapping into your intuition to create inside that house the feeling, the vibe that you want. Maybe it has to do with decorations or paint or outside gardening or whatever the case might be, to make it more your own, more artistic, more comfortable, taking in the feng shui or whatever you want to incorporate, that kind of like energetic assessment of your home, and doing that kind of portion of it. And then when we come to 8, 8 is like when you get to just relax and have people over and have a dinner that you've always dreamed of in your beautiful new kitchen and your new dining room, and enjoying it, and having people over, or enjoying your beautiful backyard or out in your garden, when it's fully in bloom, and just sitting there and enjoying it. And, you're getting the retribution, you're getting your fill of all of this hard work that you put in, being able to see the whole intention as a whole now. And this has to do with consequences, intention, and karma, all that you've built here. And I will say that if it's a creation or something you've been forcing, and you really forced through 5, and you really shoved things into places and are holding them tightly, and forcing your way through 5, 6, and 7, and trying to say like a house of cards, right? and they fell down at 5, and you've kind of put them back up, and maybe you taped them up together so that they're like kind of the way you wanted them to be through 6, and you're like, oh yeah, you're faking yourself that you're in this perseverance state, and then like you are in 7 and you're kind of like trying to envision the whole thing as it could have been and would have been without all your taped pieces, if it was just really actually sitting the way that you had designed it without putting super glue and not breathing at it, not even looking at it, and you're kind of faking your way through 7. Well, when 8 comes, you're going to notice that somebody comes by and just knocks that whole card down, or there's a shake and the whole table falls, and or like the tape comes undone, or whatever the case might be. You know, you'll have a big breath on it on accident, you'll laugh, and the whole thing comes down. And that's your 8. That's your karma, because you faked and forced your way through 5, 6, and 7, when 5 you should have cut ties and started over, but you refused to see and push through. You know, there's another thing about the 8 that can really come up that seems karmatic and almost like out of your control, like the 5, but it's not out of your control, you know. And if you had listened to your control and intuition through the whole building, 8 is a wonderful place of reflection and enjoyment. But if not, it's a great place of karmatic um, consequences that will, you know, just come in. So, and my little tidbit for number 8 is this end will be a new beginning. And so a lot of times, like with the house metaphor, right? You get to relax in your beautifully made house, but then you get to see all the new beginnings that could start there. Maybe you want to have a garden club, maybe you want to have a book club, maybe you want to have dinners on a certain night with family every Friday night, this, you know, have a dinner date or whatever. All these new things start to become apparent of what you could build onto this original choice of original point, right? You start to see that, yeah, you're coming to a closing of building the house, or whatever the metaphor is, you know, but that it's just started a whole new availability of new things, of new beginnings, right? And that's the beautiful higher sight that comes with the infinite 8. Understanding endings are new beginnings, and beginnings are endings in themselves, and appreciating that whole flow. And once you can get into that, and once you can appreciate it, and once you can fully embody it, then you transition into 9. And 9 in itself is such a beautiful number. It's such a funny number. It's amazing. I'll get more into this. Maybe I'll do a 369 kind of Tesla video about the beautiful functioning of the 9 and the creation of energy. The setting of it, not really the creation, because the 3 and 6 are about the creation, but the 9 is like the setting, setting still of things, or setting in motion, or setting boundary. And what I have here on my little list here is completion, your desire is attained, accomplishment, the boundary, and 9 is like the setting, you know, the final completed place where we can set a sacred boundary of containment, and this can be that, you know. And for the house metaphor and the building of the house metaphor, right, just like I was saying, the 8 is realizing about having what you could do with your new house and all these new opportunities you're going to have inside of it, what you're going to do inside of it. But 9 is the resting of the building of the house. I'm done with the building, I'm done with the architecture, the creating, the design, all of the hard work I put into physically putting the walls up and the plumbing and all of that. All of it's done. And I can put my seal of I did it. I built this house, and this time, from this time to this time, the sacred boundary is set of building and making the house as beautiful as I wanted and as functional and for all these reasons that I wanted it for. This gets set in a setting, a sacred boundary that defines the space and the time in a little bubble of reality and says, this was the house building time. Or just like if it was a play, you know what I mean? When, because some people get really confused about the meaning of 9 versus 8, because on surface level, sometimes they seem very much the same. And you're like, well, completion and consequences like kind of seem the same. And this can happen a lot with tarot too. That's why I'm kind of bringing this up here at the end. But if you look at it, 8, like a on Broadway play or whatever, 8 will be the final scenes of the play, the closing of the play, the end scenes. But 9 is like when everybody comes out all the actors come out at the end, the curtain call kind of thing. They all come out and they're all like, this is it. This is who we were. This is what we were for today. We played these parts. Everybody claps. The red curtain's behind them. It has nothing to do with the scene or the play that was happening there, but it's just the appreciation and the setting of, okay, this is done now. This was what was involved. It is over. Let's give thanks and appreciation. Let's give our full round of applause here and know that this is the end. And that when everybody steps off the stage, they're back to themselves. They're not the actor. They're not, Peter Pan that they were in the play or whatever. They're back to being like Allie, the regular person. And they step off that stage. But that 9 part is like the closing call. It's like setting a sacred boundary. And it's so important that we take time and that we appreciate the 9, because the 9 is invisible and the 9 is all encompassing. And the 9 is supportive to every other number. It doesn't take center stage, and it's not it's as simple as looking at when we all say like the magic 9, you know what I mean, in math when you're learning, say, addition, and you want to understand, say 9 plus 4 is 13. Well, we get the answer of 13, which reduces or combines back down to the number 4, because 1 plus 3 is 4. And so we're back to 4, which we started to try to combine with the 9, right? But 9's like no longer there. It's a mystery. There's a lot of these little understandings and workings that comes with the sacred number 9. And I think I'll do like maybe each number in a video and talk more in-depthly about them. But this is the functionality of the 9. It just sort of resides inside all the other numbers. It allows them to be who they are without interfering. And sacred boundaries work the same way, because we can set them in wherever they are set. And yeah, it allows for free flow of information through without a distortion, because it's like a membrane, It has channels in and out, but it just holds the structure. And that's what a sacred boundary of number 9 does. And now after 9, I have this other little tidbit here with the arrow that goes into number 10. And number 10, and I'll get into this more when I talk more about numerology, how we take bigger numbers and we reduce them, and how we can honor the numbers they're made up of in order to get a better, clearer view of this reductionary single digit meaning. And I'll give an explanation using 10 here. So 10 signifies the recycling back to the 1. It's a fresh start, one which is only possible through true actualization of the original idea. This new journey will be built upon the same foundation, the old foundation. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning, about having a choice points and cycling through the 9 and then getting a new idea that is built off of this original idea, and then running it through that same pattern of 0 through 9 evolution, and then getting a deeper meaning on it and coming back. Now, the first time around, we'll bring you to the 10. And 10 in itself, because we have 1 with the 0 here, it signifies 1 as this anchor, or tying back the original ideas, the 1 from the original 1. The time you went around the first time, that first initial idea. So if it's something that's built off of that, again, like say with our house idea, our house metaphor, maybe you wanted to build that house and use part of it for like a daycare. When 10 can be the daycare now, building the ideas and what it's going to look like, and you could run 0 through 9 on building that daycare, setting the whole scene of what that whole area and aspect of your house is going to be cared for, and building it, and what actions are going to happen, and intentions and people are going to be involved in it. And that would look like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because now you're on the same idea of this initial original 0 point, but you're making more depth to it. You're making it a bigger idea, a deeper picture. And so you would see 11, 12, 13, and each one of these workings now, the secondary number in the 1 spot, will be working and needs to take into account, and needs to have a relationship, and needs to be comparing and contrasting itself, and working through the membrane of the sacred boundary of 9 that you've already created with the 1, for the 10's place 1, right? It holds that sacred 9 boundary, it holds that meaning and intention there, and then it infuses with these new 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 of this idea. And as long as you're listening to the original one and bouncing these new numbers through it, you'll make your way, and you'll come back to the same 9 sacred boundary of something new, and maybe you'll have a new, deeper meaning, and you'll want to go into the 20s, and you'll see new workings in this deeper realm and comparing the number 2, the 20, the second building of it. Maybe you let it go and start something totally fresh, new at a new 0, a whole new blank space. And then, bam, new idea, totally separate. And you're back at number 1. And you work your way through 1 through 9. And then you decide if you want to take it deeper or not. So that's the whole cycling and working through the path that I wanted to give just a brief understanding of sequential growth. And it's so important and to just take this whole thing away and not, and see your life growing through this. And understand where you are. And the universe will show you flashes of numbers or synchronicities or give you signs, either of guidance or comfort or support, advice, based on numbers sometimes. And if you're seeing a certain number a lot of times, then check into the number meaning and be like, oh, well, maybe they're trying to tell me I'm approaching a 5 state and I need to be ready. Or maybe I'm feeling stagnation and, losing motivation in a certain idea, and I'm seeing 4s everywhere. And it's a reminder, I better get on it. Either I want to go through with this and I need to find some motivation, I need to renew it and get ready for testing phases that will be happening at 5, or I need to let this whole idea go and get back to 0 and start over because I'm bored in 4, right? It's not to be judgmental, it's not to cast judgment on things or to say something's a bad idea or a good idea or you're not worthy or you're not. No. It's about knowing yourself and knowing, can you take it through the full thing or not? And having self-respect for your time and for your energy to let something go if it's not for you. Give it back to the universe and say at a later time maybe, or give it to Conscious Collective and let some other being get it from imagination space and pursue it. If it's not for you, it's okay. And finally here, this is getting a little long, but I am going to close out with just using this whole template in comparison to talk really quickly about the densities. And I'll do a way deeper dive on the densities and really talk about it and bring in some resources and references for people who are interested in it because it's such a huge topic. But it works the same exact way in the cycling, in the orchestra. Densities in themselves wrap themselves into octaves through the 8 cycling because 9 is invisible. 9 won't actually be a step in the densities because of the sacred boundary holding. There is a 9th density and perhaps 9th density beings who hold the sacred boundaries. But in the octaves of development that happen through physicality and that are weighted and tied down to dimensions as well as densities that can have physicality to them if they would want to, we're going to look at 1 through 8. So let me just stop this little number 1 and pull up my densities here quickly. Bear with me. Now hopefully this isn't tiny, and when I go back and look at it you guys can actually see. I know this is maybe if I make it a little bigger here. I wish I could see what you guys are seeing, so I'm sorry if it looks a little bit. I made it in an infographic that's very long dimensions. So hopefully you can see the big picture here. But as you can see, I have 1 through 9 down the bottom. And I've matched this in the coloration because it's very important to remember that this does go with coloration. There are rays, that light rays that coagulate within each density as well and that have a harnessing power and an importance and stuff like that. And I'll get into that later. But I made the picture along the colorization so that you could see and also understand how they match up with the chakras, which is what I was talking about at the beginning as well. And quickly here I will say for people who are totally not aware of chakras or what they mean, right? We have the root chakra, the first chakra, which is signified by the color red, which is by the base of your spine, and it's all about your roots. It's base level security, survival kind of things that have to do with that. We have second chakra, which is your sacral chakra, which is the color orange, which is a little up from the base of your spine, sort of on the like the pubic area, lower abdomen type of area, and this signifies your passions, what ignites your flames. It has to do with sexual energy. It has to do with motivation and in interpersonal relationships, direct relationships, and how we incorporate those and use those, and how we fuel our own passions and our own desires as well. And then we come up to the third chakra, which is the color yellow, which is usually the solar plexus. And that is seen more as like the ego kind of center, the I am. It's that power, personal power space, that real signifier that you're an individual, that you can express yourself and how you do that, and what that feels like to you. And we get into the fourth center, green, heart chakra, which has to do obviously with love and unconditional love, and empathy and compassion and feelings, emotions and all of that stuff, and listening to that kind of stuff and allowing that kind of stuff. And then we have the fifth chakra, which is the throat chakra, which we see as like a sky blue, a light blue, clear blue color. That has to do with speaking your truth, hearing truth, speaking freely, aligning with truth in that kind of way. And then we have here is, the sixth center. Sometimes in other, in Western shamanic practices, it isn't just seen, there's three centers in here that get worked with. But I'll keep it quick for today and just call it the third eye center, the mind's eye center. And that is seen as an indigo color, a dark blue color, and that is seen as like your intuition, your connection to all other human beings, and your spiritual connection, connection to your imagination space, all those kind of like those thought centers. It has to do with those. And then we have the last center, which can be seen as 7 in the Eastern, or 9, the crown chakra, and that's usually the color purple, deep purple, violet, and that has to do with connecting out to God consciousness, to source, to the ether, spirit realm, outside the body, the bigger picture, whatever you want to see it as. And that's usually a little bit outside of your body, actually body vessel right above your head. So those are the chakras, very simply, for people who are unaware with them. And so now we can look right here at the density map that I have, and I'm just going to zoom in a little, and we'll start down at the bottom and go through the top. And as you can see, right, they're going to follow suit with the same thing that I just went over. And it's not coincidence, it's organic template building, and this is why they all look alike. And this is what I call undeniable truths. When we start to see all of these interlinking lines bubbling up and showing comparatively that they are the same, then we should take note of that and be mindful of that, in my opinion. And this is how I've discovered all of these interlinking things, right? Anyway, so when we talk about densities, and I will get into a little bit more about some references and resources into this, but there's a lot of different people in talking about densities and stuff. One of my favorite resources is the Law of One books. If you haven't checked them out, definitely check them out. I love that. But there's lots of other sort of belief patterns and people in different groups who talk about densities and how they work and everything, and the 7 rays and stuff. But first of all, we have, well, I'll just say it's not on the chart, but we have the zero space, obviously, and that's the ether, that's original, that's the infinite creator, the before, the observer, whatever you want to look at that as. Now, first density is red ray, and it is base level consciousness. And that basically is like single cell life, rocks, the earth, water, fire, all of these kind of natural occurrences that don't have a consciousness that is apparent. The first density things are run by infinite intelligence and organic templates. They are not controllable or impressionable by human beings. It's not anything that a human being can have control over or design or create. intentionally. And we'll get, there's gray areas and things like this. So nothing that I'm saying is like pinpoint, direct, complete either. You know, there is always wiggle room for infinite manyness to be explored. You know what I mean? And I'll briefly say, as I say so many times about this, the overlook of the densities. I'm going to be counting from 1 to 9, and I'm going to just jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But it's important to understand in this place and space that we've created here, that the infinite creator gives to us, that 1 to 2 contains infinite exploration in there. Just like we could say 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, all the way to the number 2 in measurements, right? You can do that, and that's available to you. And I'm not saying that it's not, just because I'm going to jump from 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not trying to negate or say that there's not exploration to be happened in there, that you can't go for infinity counting between 1 and 2, because you can. If you wanted to make 1.1112, 1.1113, 1.1114, and then keep, you know what I mean? That's available and that is there. But I'm just trying to give quick delineations of the steps here. So base level consciousness is, run by organic intelligence, and it has a growth pattern and sacred boundary that's outside of human interaction. It happens on its own and it doesn't matter. It will go without human input, energy input, basically. Or higher consciousness is energy input, okay? And for verbiage that's a little bit more out there, it's like this consciousness is run by infinite intelligence, by the ether, by organic thought, God consciousness, whatever you want to look at that as. That's what tells this whole first density what to do, when to move, how to grow, and all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't have its own level of consciousness. It is completely inserted into the ether. And so, nature or God runs the show for that. It tells rocks when to grow. It tells the ocean how to move, it tells the breeze how to blow. And even like microscopic animals, microscopic life, like cellular level, bacteria, protozoa, like all of these tiny things, all are first density. Second density, we get into a seeking of light. There's a conscious awareness given and developing when we get to second density. And a rule of thumb with second density is the seeking of light, of new information, of absorbing information from source, and knowing that you need to turn to source for information. And a simple, broad explanation of this is how plants turn to the light, to the sun, right? That general seeking of sun, of light, of information and nutrients that we turn to the logos for, the great, conductor of this plane in space. And so second density, it doesn't have its own set of conscious awareness yet. It hasn't really developed that yet, but it does know it needs to seek the light. It does know the logos of growth. And so it's got its own capabilities to use its own sacred boundary of itself, so quote unquote, into the seeking of light and the expansion of consciousness, right? Absorbing more consciousness is basically what's happening. Love and understanding. And as a being moves through that and gets more love and gets more understanding and gets more intelligent and their conscious awareness is growing, they will come out of second density and into third density. And third density is when you're self-aware. Third density can be even include animals. Some animals are in second density depending on whether they live in hive mind or not. But the stepping out of the hive mind and the actualization of individualization is that graduation into third density. And third density is all about so many lessons of being self-aware and learning how to make choices and deciding for yourself and growing in conscious awareness, and whether you want to or not, right? Because now you have the ability to move around as well. And a lot of times second density doesn't have personal choice to move its own physical body. It can move with the group, or it can follow instructions based on a group kind of mind think, or even with plants, you can see them shift and change and move, or they have different ways of interacting with the environment around them, but they are not able to just pick up their whole roots and walk away and walk on their own. So third density, brings us into conscious choice points, gaining more conscious awareness, becoming self-aware. And how we graduate into fourth density is learning how to work that self-aware consciousness into being community aware, into being aware of others, and to being heart-centered and empathetic and feeling love, right? And being able to express it and share it. And now that's a little bit like, positive evolution of fourth density, because negative alignment with fourth density is a little bit different, considering they don't believe in the heart center. And so fourth density turns into shutting the heart off and learning about manipulation of community over others, and manipulation of the heart center into a contortion to where you could just tap into 5 and 6 and 7. And I'll talk more about that when I get into more densities. But for positive alignment and positive growth is what I'm going to focus on here. And to graduate to fourth density, it requires heart-centered beingness, empathy, and I'll say quickly, that's kind of where we're at with our growth of humanity and with Earth's ascension, right? So we have great models of examples out in the world right now as to whether we're choosing negative or positive alignment, whether we're choosing positive evolution and opening and connecting to the heart center and drawing up everything into there, or whether we're working to shut it out and scoop around it and make our way into fifth density. Fifth density is unity focused. It is truth and transparency focused. It is information driven. And it is usually generally seen as like a lighter blue color. Fifth density can a lot of times showcase the spirit realm, and also that's on a spectrum of polarity as well, right? Now, as far as my learning and knowledge has gone, and what I'm going to speak about is that our whole octave of the 8 with the sacred boundary of the 9, density rules over that whole octave. And so, duality, excuse me, did I say density rules? Duality rules over our whole octave. And so we'll see flavorings and shading of choice points that have to do with duality and dualistic thinking through all of the densities here. Although it depends on which side that you're growing and transitioning through, or hoping to make your way, your alignment and orientation through, that will give you cues as to what you do to ascend to the next, to graduate, to get to the next density, basically. And the thing is, with the negative and positive being stuck within the sacred boundary, it kind of is an underlying truth to tell us that incorporation and balancing is what's most important here. It's not about castrating or cutting off the dark side or stopping people from evolving on that path, but integrating and understanding that all of it has a role in this whole setup, and that it's here for a purpose. So 5 gets us into unity focused. It's a collective consciousness. That's why I like to see it as the spirit realm, or collective consciousness out there, the imagination realm sort of space that is heavily inhabited by higher beings. And then we get into 6th density, and 6th density is more about creative consciousness. It has to do with how exactly we work with like the geometries of shapes and ideas, and this gets into sacred geometry and the way that energy is formed and how we pull down thought information down into physical reality, third dimensions. So 6th density has a lot to do with the workings of dimension and how physicality is created and how we make solid or material or malleable things out of our thoughts, out of our mind, out of conceptual energy, you know. And there's great spiritual, you know, realm and beings and workings in sixth density as well. Seventh density is like spiritual ascension. A lot of times, seventh density will be what we consider to be the wanderers, those who are called back to help people down in third or fourth. And a lot of times, what people see, or I have heard even, is that your higher self is seventh density, and that seventh density graduation, in order to actually get through, you have to do this service for yourself. You have to come back as higher self and speak whispers to your beautiful third density self to guide them and get them to make these straight choices and to get up to seventh density, basically. Um, it's a beautiful service that we offer, you know, from higher sight into down, you know. Um, and eighth density is density which is going to be seeking harmony, right? It's the biggest picture, homeostasis. It's the real alchemy portion that's happening when you can see all of the negative and the positive side of the spectrum in a much bigger picture and understand the great flow and alchemy that's happening. Um, in eighth density, I do believe is more of like archangel energy, but I could be wrong, so don't completely quote me on that. I have to go back and look at, there's, I forget which one it is, but I think it was a Theosophical Society. They do a great video on talking more and more about like the entities and the individual types of consciousness that work at these different, the rays, the different levels. Um, but just for a brief outline here, you know, this is just what I'm trying to showcase. In eighth density is usually beings who know they're up for their, you know, they're up for graduation. For ninth density is like the setting of the sacred boundary, right? It's the ending. And it's that mystical mystery kind of top as to who says what it is and how it works. And it's, in my point of view, it's not really meant to sort of be able to logically pinpoint and put it down like a butterfly on one of those books, you know, where you nail them to the chart and look at them, you know, and then you think you're finding out what a butterfly is, but you'll never find out the magic of butterfly flight with a dead butterfly taped to a piece of paper. You're never going to be able to explore and understand how the magic of flight works. You know, the magic of flight, it's you observe it, you see it happening, and you appreciate it. That's all that there is to that. And that's the same thing with ninth density. It's like that. It's unexplainable. And so I won't try. I'll save us all that. So yeah, that's been my walkthrough through just about understanding the densities and the octaves and how we grow through it and how this is an organic template and how we see it modeled across many different categories of information, how we can interpret it and use it as a guide to guide us through in the present moment and also in our whole life, right? So I hope that this has been relatively informational. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a little longer than I wanted it to go for, but hey, I tend to be long-winded, so what can I say? Thanks for listening for the whole time. Please feel free to leave comments or replies if you have questions or intrigues or insights, different ways to see things. If you've heard things differently, I'd love to hear about it. You can put them in the comments. You can send me an email. My email's always in the description somewhere down there. Find me on Telegram or Spotify in the meantime if you're interested in hearing more about what I have to say, or YouTube or BitChute or amariespeaks.com. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I thank you for your beautiful service to our collective. I'll catch you next time.